Hey guys, the Firebird is here. It's just me, and I really don't keep a lot of my promises. Like, I said I was gonna do daily videos and I didn't upload for the last 2 days. And you guys are probably thinking that I probably had some, very important grown-up business that it didn't allow me to make videos. Well, in reality, I was just playing a lot of Code Vein. Yeah, they released this new update and I just been having a lot of fun with it. So I've been kinda distracted. But anyways, I'm back. So in the past I released plenty of videos talking about, things that are not from the movies, such as the aligned continuity or even G1 at times. So in this video I kinda wanted to do the same thing, do something a bit different, see if you guys like it. And I'm talking about the Wreckers, who's alive, who's dead, and the backstory of the organization. Now, I'm only doing this for Transformers Prime, so if you guys want me to talk about, the Wreckers in the live action movies, the animated cartoons, Shattered Glass, even G1, let me know and I might do it in the future. So anyways, what are the Wreckers? I think we should begin with that. Now, the Wreckers are basically the Black Ops of the Autobots. They started out as guardians for the Autobot High Council, and later turned into a Black Ops unit for the Autobots, taking jobs that no other Autobot will be willing to do. Basically suicide missions. Bulkhead and Wheeljack were some of its early members, although Bulkhead left after joining Team Prime, and Wheeljack will leave shortly after the Wreckers were placed under the command of Ultra Magnus, since they were basically loose cannons. They went in, outside regulations, didn't ask for permission, they just went on and attacked any Decepticon target that they please. Which in hindsight that might seem like a good thing, but in reality it kinda messes with the chain of command, and if you have your troops just running around doing whatever, you're not gonna be able to win in the long run. So Optimus Prime wanted Ultra Magnus to discipline the Wreckers, and that wasn't taken very well with Wheeljack, who left the team in protest of this. Now, the Wreckers actually participated in quite a few notable battles, such as the Battle of Hydrax Plateau. Even more impressive, the Battle of Tagan Heights, where the Decepticons unleashed Devastator onto the city, and the Wreckers led by Ultra Magnus were tasked to keep Devastator at bay until more reinforcements can arrive in the form of the Autobot Combiner Defensor. They also guarded the Well of Allsparks during the events of War for Cybertron, when Optimus Prime traveled to the core of Cybertron alongside Ironhide and Warpath in order to reverse the effects of Dark Energy. The Wreckers were also left behind on Cybertron and participated in quite a few battles post the Ark and the Nemesis leaving the planet. And after that, the story of the Wreckers kinda, branches off, and it ends with the events of Transformers Prime, where the remaining Wreckers help Team Prime basically win the war. We already know how that goes. So that's pretty much the summarized backstory of the Wreckers. But now I'm gonna talk about its members, because the aligned continuity has to have the largest amount of members for the Wreckers, second to the IDW comics. The IDW comics actually have a lot of Wreckers, but the aligned continuity I will say has the second largest amount of Wreckers. So I'm gonna go by them one by one, starting with Bulkhead. You already know what happened to Bulkhead. He was basically a demolitioner before the war started, building things, breaking things, and after that he joined the Wreckers, and fought in many battles before leaving his band of brothers to join Optimus Prime. He's one of the longest surviving members of the Wreckers, and even survived all the way to the events of Transformers Robots in Disguise. While it hasn't been particularly stated, it can be assumed that his state as member of the Wreckers was basically to be the tank of the group, taking plenty of enemy damage and dishing out plenty of damage of his own to the enemy. Next up we got Physitron, who's the engineer of the Wreckers. He's a pretty well known and feared member of the Wreckers. He's also known by the names of Iron Fist, Physitron, and Bullethead. We don't know what happened to him and whether he's alive or not, but last thing that we know of him is that after the fall of Cybertron, once the Decepticons took complete control over the planet, he was arrested by Barricade and Frenzy, who accused him of war crimes involving chemical weaponry, and the deaths of 140 Decepticons at the Outpost Terrorist. Whether this is true or not, it's yet to be seen. Next up we got Hotshot, and no, not to be confused with the Hotshot from Rescue Bots, cause does that look like record material to you? Hotshot is basically the scout slash infiltrator of the group. He's pretty strong and agile in combat. His current status is unknown, but the last thing that we know about him is that he was taking refuge with the small surviving cell of the Wreckers led by Autobot Cub. What happened to him by the events of Robots in Disguise is currently unknown. Next up we got Impactor. Impactor is the commander of the Wreckers. It can be assumed that he was in charge before Ultra Magnus took over. He fought in many battles during the war, and after the Ark and Nemesis left Cybertron, he stayed behind to lead the other Autobot civilians of Cybertron once the Decepticons incorrectly assumed that all that remained of the Autobots was in the Ark. He led all the remaining civilian ships of Cybertron. Although, Wheeljack will later mention that he was killed during the war. This most likely means that at some point after he left Cybertron, he was hunted down by the Decepticons and executed. His current status is killed in action. Jetfire is an interesting one. Apparently he didn't start off as a wrecker, but after Fall of Cybertron at some point he became an official member. Soon after the fall of Cybertron, the Quintessons with an army of Decepticons invaded Cybertron, seeking to take over now that the majority of the Autobot and Decepticon forces were gone. The wreckers that were left behind on Cybertron led multiple strike teams against the Quintessons' takeover. Eventually they managed to repel the Quintessons, but last thing we know about Jetfire and his cell of wreckers was that they were stationed on Cybertron soon after the defeat of the Quintessons. However, in Robots in Disguise, the High Council blacklisted him for being a supporter of Optimus Prime, so we can assume that he's still alive by that point. Next up we got Autobot Cub. It can be assumed that he's the weapons expert of the group, due to his type of weaponry that he keeps in hand. Last thing we know about him is that he was aboard the Ark when the Autobots departed Aquatron to continue searching for the Allspark. And by the time of Robots in Disguise, he was blacklisted by the High Council, so we can assume by the time of Robots in Disguise, Cub is most likely still alive, since at no point was he considered to be killed in action. Next up we got Miko Nakadai. Now this should be quite obvious if you watch Transformers Prime. She becomes an official member of the Wreckers after proving her bravery in many Wrecker operations. Despite being a mere human, she has actually gone up against quite a few Decepticons and survived, such as when she killed the Decepticon Hardshell by using Wheeljack's ship, or even the time when she used the Apex armor to survive against the Beast Predaking, and later banished Soundwave to the Shadow Realm. What happens to her after the events of Transformers Prime is unknown, but we can assume that she just lived the rest of her life normally, after Team Prime left Earth. Next up we got Moonracer, and Moonracer is actually the sniper of the Wreckers. We don't really know a lot about Moonracer in the Align continuity. All that we know is that she accompanied the Wreckers at one point to fight against a bunch of Doomsday cultists that were trying to destroy the Well of Allsparks. Her team succeeded and all of the cultists were terminated. What happens to her afterward is unknown, but she did survive the operation. By the time of Robots in Disguise, she was blacklisted by the High Council, so we can assume that she's probably alive at that point. Next up we got Pyro. Pyro was a wrecker and that's all we know about him. All that we know is that Wheeljack mentioned that he was one of the casualties they suffered during the war. Wreck and Ruin were actually two Autobots that were merged into one once Shockwave experimented on them. So naturally they grew to resent Shockwave, but despite their condition they still managed to join the Wreckers in order to get payback on Shockwave, which they managed to do in quite a few occasions by ruining Shockwave's plans from time to time, and also blowing up a lot of Shockwave's properties. Their current whereabouts is unknown. Last thing we know about them is that they destroyed one of Shockwave's towers, humming cheerily while doing so. Next up we got Roadbuster. Roadbuster is the warrior of the Wreckers. He can always be found on the front lines and always takes the enemy head on. All that we know about him is that he died at some point during the war. Wheeljack was the one who brought up his death, so most likely he died at some point after Ultra Magnus took over. Rodimus joined the Wreckers later during the war, and he also participated on the defense of Cybertron once the Quintessons tried to invade the planet with their army of Decepticons. Rodimus and the Wreckers fought long and hard, but eventually with both Autobots and Decepticons working together, they managed to repel the Quintesson invasion. What happens to him after that is unknown, but by the time of Robots in Disguise, he was blacklisted by the High Council, so it can be assumed that he's alive by that point. Rotorstorm was a wrecker, and we can assume that he was the aerial support of the Wreckers. We don't know much about him except that he participated in a battle against the Combaticons and Devastator after the events of Fall of Cybertron. However, Wheeljack will reveal that he eventually died at some point during the war. Next up we got Ruination, and Ruination is basically a recolor of Bruticus, except that he's an Autobot. He's the combiner of the Wreckers and their ultimate trump card. He's composed of Impactor, Topspin, Whirl, Roadbuster, and Twin Twist. However, since most of these guys are dead, we can say that Ruination is officially offline. Seaspray was a member of the Wreckers. We don't know much about him, but at some point after the fall of Cybertron, him and Wheeljack were gonna meet up, but the Decepticon known as Dreadwing got to him first and destroyed his spaceship, killing the Autobot. Wheeljack will later inform Bulkhead of Seaspray's death. And despite being dead, by the time of Robots in the Sky, he was also blacklisted by the High Council. Springer was a member of the Wreckers, and we can assume that he was a specialist of some kind because of his triple changing ability. Alongside a lot of the other Wreckers, he was also left behind on Cybertron, and he also helped fight against the Quintessons and the Shoutouts armies. He survived the invasion and the retaliation of the remaining Autobots and Decepticons against the Quintesson oppressors, but after that, what happens to him is unknown. However, by the time of Robots in Disguise, he was one of the many Autobots to be blacklisted by the High Council, so we can assume that he most likely survived all the way till that point. Tailspin is an Autobot Wrecker that specializes on aerial support. We don't really know much about him, except that at one point he mentioned that something that puts him off from combining into Ruination is that he doesn't want to be merged with Whirl, for understandable reasons. After that, we don't really know anything about this guy. There's no other information telling us what happened to him, so he's currently missing in action. Twin Twist is the tank of the Wreckers, and just like Bulkhead, he's also the muscle of the team. We don't really know what happened to him, much like Topspin. There's not a lot of information about this guy, so he's also missing in action. Ultra Magnus was the commander of the Wreckers after he was appointed by Optimus Prime to discipline them. He was also left behind on Cybertron, he fought against the Quintessons, and he even met with the Dinobots, forming a shaky alliance with them so they can help evacuate the remaining Autobot civilians. Eventually he met up with Team Prime and other two Wreckers, that being Wheeljack and Bulkhead. With their help, Team Prime was able to get the upper hand on the Decepticons and win the war by the end of the show. We don't know much about him at the time of Robots in Disguise, but the comics and a few outside materials have implied that he's still alive and active by that point. Whether he's still leading the Wreckers by that point is currently unknown. Wheeljack was another member of the Wreckers who specialized in close combat. Once Bulkhead left and Ultra Magnus took command of the Wreckers, Wheeljack left since for him the new chain of command didn't feel like old times, so he pretty much set out on his own. Eventually, after the fall of Cybertron, he will make it to Earth, meet up with Bulkhead and Ultra Magnus, and then help Team Prime win the war once and for all. He had a shaky relationship with Ultra Magnus, but eventually the two of them came to respect one another. And Wheeljack went back to the Wreckers and placed himself under Ultra Magnus' command once again. We don't know what happened to him by the time of Robots in Disguise, but we can assume that he's still active. Since he was one of the many Autobots to be blacklisted by the High Council. And last but not least, we have Whirl. We don't really know a lot about Whirl, except that he was a bit of a loose cannon and he was probably crazy in the head. There's not a lot of information about him, we don't know if he's alive or dead. He's currently missing, but something interesting in the Rescue Bots cartoon, the female Autobot known as Whirl, in her locker container, she has a drawing of herself with the wrecker, Whirl. So whether he's alive or not, it's really unclear, but from the small bit of information, you can see that Whirl became a really popular wrecker by the time of Robots in Disguise. Whether he's alive or not, that remains to be seen. And yeah guys, those are all the wreckers from the Align continuity. I'm surprised there were that many wreckers still alive if you think about it. While there's a lot of, dead and unknown wreckers, the Align continuity surprisingly enough has quite a few of them still alive by the time of Robots in Disguise, or at least implied to be alive. When I started this video, I expected this video to be mostly KIAs, but surprisingly a lot of these guys are still alive. I mean, there's quite a few of them missing, but who knows. But the mere fact that we got more than 4 wreckers being alive, it's surprising. But anyways guys, hopefully you enjoyed that video. Shout out goes to our patrons, Morais Prime, iPost Fate, Mario Gordon, Predaking Hunter Plays, and the absolute Matla himself, Jordan the Great, who donated $100. Thanks a lot for donating guys, it's much appreciated. Shout out goes to their channels, links them in the description down below and in the comments down below. Make sure to go check them out, they need all the help they can get. And if you guys want to shout out your subs, all you have to do is donate. By donating to my Patreon, you get access to some of my videos early, you can request your own videos, do a collab with me, asks me to cover a variety of different topics that are Transformers related, or they could also be non-Transformers related. It's up to you, and you get plenty of freedom to choose. But yeah, shout out to my patrons. Thank you guys for donating. It's really appreciated. And if you guys want to donate, you already know what to do. Just keep in mind that this is completely optional. I'm not forcing you to do so, and I don't want you to feel pressure to do so. If you want to support me, go and do so, and if you don't want to, just watch my videos. It's simple as that. But thank you for all your support, guys. Anyways, guys, that's it for this video. Hopefully you all enjoy. I do plan to talk more about the records, especially from other continuities, only if you guys are interested. I could talk in depth about, the records from the live action continuity, or I could even talk about some of the IDW records. Because the records, I found them to be really interesting, especially the whole, the records being like the Suicide Squad, which a lot of them die, and the ones that survived longest are considered to be, really legendary and really powerful Autobots. Maybe that sort of implies the world is alive at the time of Robots in Disguise. Maybe. But yeah, the records are very popular with the fans. A lot of people do like them, and honestly, I like the concept, I like the members, I like their stories, I like their fights. The records is just such a cool concept. I do hope we see more of them, especially in the movies. I mean, who doesn't like the records? Hell, even in the canon universe itself, there's Autobots who fanboy over the records. They're just that popular. But yeah, guys, let me know your thoughts on this video. Do you like these records? Do you think that the records that are currently classified as unknown are still alive? Do you think they're dead? Do you think there should be this many records to be alive by the end of the franchise? Or do you think there should be, less? Like there should be like only 2 or 3 records still, left standing? Personally, I feel like a tad bit too many records survive. It kind of defeats the purpose of the group, of the story, of these Autobots being basically the Suicide Squad. But at the same time, it's like, I like these guys. I don't want any of them to die, even though that's kind of the point of the group. But I don't know, I feel like there's a tad bit too many records still alive by the time of Robots in Disguise. And there is plenty of, missing in action records, but then again, if they're missing in action, you can go either way. You can say they're alive, you can say they're dead. So I'm not gonna count them, but I feel like there's a tad too many alive by the end of the Align continuity. But hey, maybe that's just me. Maybe you like that there's so many alive, or maybe you don't. The YouTube algorithm likes it when people leave comments, so you know what to do. So yeah, that's it for this video, guys. Like, comment, and subscribe. And remember,
records don't call for backup. They call for cleanup.